The acrid smoke of burning plasteel filled Staff Sergeant Ryan Base's lungs as he pressed his back against the crumbling wall of Firebase Delta 7. The colonial outpost on Kepler 442b had been humanity's pride, a beacon of civilization on the Mo frontier. Now it was a tomb. Vepr 2, what's your status? Ryan's voice crackled through his comm, but only static answered. His team of 12 Navy SEALs had been scattered when the Kethara insurgents breached the outer perimeter 3 hours ago. The alien raiders moved like shadows through the settlement's maze of prefab structures, their bioluminescent war paint glowing eerily in the perpetual twilight of Kepler's twin suns. Ryan's HUD showed 17 confirmed hostiles still active, closing in on the command bunker where the last survivors had barricaded themselves. His rifle's ammo counter blinked red 42 rounds left. Not nearly enough. Through the smoke, he caught glimpses of the other survivors. Dr. Elizabeth Chun, the base's chief medical officer, clutching her medkit like a shield. Corporal Jake Morrison, barely conscious with a plasma burn across his chest. 3 civilian contractors huddled in terror. And her, the alien woman, sat apart from the others, her back straight against the wall, gray overalls pristine despite the chaos. The patch on her sleeve read, Sanitation Tech, Level 3. Ryan had seen her around the base for months, always quiet, always working. She had pale blue skin marked with darker geometric patterns that seemed to shift in the flickering emergency lighting. Her people called themselves Veltar refugees from a dead world, grateful for any honest work the human colonies could provide. Alara, Ryan called to her. She looked up with large, golden eyes that seemed far too old for her face. Can you handle basic medical? Doc Chun's going to need help with Morrison. She nodded once, rising with fluid grace that seemed oddly purposeful. Yes, Sergeant. An explosion rocked the bunker, and dust rained from the ceiling. Through the reinforced windows, Ryan could see the orange glow of plasma charges eating through the outer blast doors. The Kethara were known for taking prisoners especially. Human soldiers. They enjoyed making examples. How long until extraction? Dr. Chun asked, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. Ryan checked his tactical display. The next scheduled supply run wasn't for 6 days. The communications array had been the first thing the raiders hit. They were truly alone. Working. On it, he lied smoothly. Right now, we hold position. And the blast door exploded inward, twisted metal screaming through the air. 3 Kethara warriors poured through the breach, their chitinous armor gleaming wet in the emergency lighting. They moved with the predatory grace of apex hunters, biorifles already tracking targets. Ryan dove right, his training kicking in as muscle memory took over. His rifle barked 3 times, catching the lead warrior center mass. The aliens stumbled, but didn't fall. Their armor was too good, their physiology too alien. A return shot seared past his head, close enough to singe his eyebrows. The second warrior was already flanking, using the debris for cover. Ryan's tactical mind calculated odds and angles, finding them all bad. He needed someone to cover the left approach, but Morrison was down, and the civilians were useless in a firefight. His eyes found Alara, still crouched beside the wounded corporal. She was watching the battle with an intensity that seemed strange. For a maintenance worker, there was no fear in her golden eyes, only a cold, calculating assessment that reminded him of his own reflection in the mirror before a mission. On impulse, driven by desperation and a soldier's instinct he couldn't quite name, Ryan pulled his backup sidearm, a military-grade plasma pistol, and tossed it toward her. Cover the flank. He shouted over the gunfire. She caught the weapon without looking, her fingers finding the grip with practiced ease. For just a moment, their eyes met across the smoky chaos, and Ryan saw something flicker in her gaze, a door opening that had Been locked for a very long time. Then she moved, and everything changed. Alara's transformation was instantaneous and terrifying. One moment she was a quiet sanitation worker crouched beside a wounded soldier. The next, she flowed into motion like liquid death. She rolled left behind an overturned desk, the plasma pistol already an extension of her hand. The Kethara warrior, flanking Ryan, never saw her coming. Her first shot took him in the gap between helmet and chest plate, a precision strike that dropped him instantly. But it was how she moved that made Ryan's blood run cold with recognition. This wasn't luck or adrenaline. This was training, military training, a kind that turned flesh and bone into a weapon. She ghosted through the smoke, using angles and shadows that shouldn't have existed in the confined space. When the third Kethara warrior spun toward her position, she was already gone, repositioning with tactical awareness that would have impressed his instructors at Coronado. Her second shot came from an impossible angle, ricocheting off a metal beam to catch the warrior in his unprotected flank. The alien's biorifle clattered to the floor as he collapsed. Silence fell over the bunker, broken only by the distant sound of more explosions from somewhere in the base. Ryan stared at Alara as she rose from cover, checking corners with professional efficiency before safing the weapon. "Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that?" he demanded. She looked at him for a long moment, and he saw something crumble behind her golden eyes. "My people called it Valthara Ken the Ghost Walk. It was ... a long time ago." Dr. Chun was staring at her in shock. "Alara, you're a janitor. You clean toilets." "I clean many things," Alara replied quietly, handing the pistol back to Ryan. "It is honest work." Before anyone could respond, Corporal Morrison groaned, his eyes fluttering open. "Sarge, what's our status?" "3 hostiles down, but there are more coming," Ryan said, his tactical mind already moving past his questions about Alara. "Survival first, answers later. We need to move. This position is compromised." Through the shattered blast door, they could hear the distinctive whine of Kethara hoverbikes approaching. The raiders were regrouping for another assault. "Where can we go?" Dr. Chon asked. "The whole base is overrun." Ryan consulted his tactical map, highlighting safe routes in his HUD. Most showed red hostile contact probable. But there was one path that might work. "The maintenance tunnels," he said. "They run beneath the entire complex. If we can reach the vehicle bay, there might be a transport still functional." Alara stepped forward. "I know those tunnels better than anyone. I can guide you." There was something in her voice, a quiet authority that hadn't been there before. Ryan studied her face, noting details he'd missed in all their previous encounters. The way she held herself now, balanced and ready. The unconscious way she'd positioned herself to cover the room's entrances. The clinical efficiency with which she'd dispatched 2 alien warriors. "What's your real story?" he asked. She met his gaze steadily. "My story is that I want these people to live. The rest can wait." Morrison struggled to sit up, wincing as the movement pulled at his wounds. "Sarge, whoever she is, she just saved our asses. I vote we trust her." Another explosion, closer this time. Through the windows, they could see the flicker of biorifle fire in the corridors beyond. Ryan made his decision. In combat, you worked with what you had, not what you wished you had. And right now, what he had was a mysteriously skilled alien. Woman who knew the base better than anyone and could shoot like a professional soldier. Dr. Chon helped Morrison. "Stay close and stay quiet." He turned to Alara. "Lead the way. But I want answers when we're clear." She nodded once, then moved toward a maintenance hatch hidden behind a bank of servers. Her fingers found the access codes without hesitation, and the heavy panel slid aside to reveal a narrow tunnel lit by emergency strips dot as they prepared to descend into the darkness. Ryan caught a glimpse of something on Alara's exposed forearm geometric. Scars that looked almost like military tattoos. When she noticed his attention, she quickly pulled her sleeve down. "After you, Sergeant," she said, but there was a weight to the words that suggested she understood military protocol better than any maintenance worker should. The tunnel waited below, promising either salvation or a more private place to die. The maintenance tunnels beneath Firebase Delta 7 were a maze of pipes, conduits, and serviceways that Alara navigated with the confidence of someone who had crawled through far worse. She led them through the mechanical bowels of the base, her footsteps silent despite the metallic grating underfoot. Behind her, Ryan moved with the practiced stealth of his SEAL training, supporting the wounded Morrison, while Dr. Chun tried too. Keep up. The civilian contractors had been left behind, cruel but necessary. In the tunnels, they would have been liabilities that got everyone killed. "Contact rear," Morrison whispered into his comm. 2 heat signatures following, maybe 3. 100 meters back. The Kethara had found their trail. The alien raiders were persistent hunters, and their bioluminescent tracking abilities made them dangerous in confined spaces. Alara paused at a junction, her head tilted as if listening to something the humans couldn't hear. The geometric patterns on her visible skin seemed to shimmer in the emergency lighting, and Ryan realized they weren't tattoos at all. They were natural markings that responded to her emotional state. Asterisk. "There's a vertical shaft 50 meters ahead," she said quietly. "It leads to the vehicle bay, but will be exposed for 30 seconds during the climb." "What about alternatives?" Ryan asked. "The long route adds 10 minutes. We don't have 10 minutes." She was right. Even now, they could hear the soft chittering of Kethara communication echoing through the tunnels behind them. The hunters were closing distance. "I'll go first," Ryan decided. "Establish overwatch." "No." Alara's voice carried an authority. That made him pause. "I go first. I'm faster, and I know the bay's layout." There was something in her tone, the unmistakable confidence of someone who had made similar tactical decisions before. Ryan studied her face in the dim light, seeing new details. A small scar across her left eyebrow. The way her eyes constantly tracked movement and angles. The unconscious military bearing that no amount of civilian work could completely erase. "Who are you really?" he asked. For a moment, her composure cracked, and he saw something vulnerable beneath the competent exterior. "I told you." "That can wait." "No, it can't." Morrison struggled to prop himself against the tunnel wall, his face pale from blood loss. "Sarge, I've been thinking." The way she moved back there, the shot placement, the tactical awareness, that's not something you pick up from a training manual. Alara's golden eyes flicked between them, and Ryan could see her weighing options. Finally, she spoke. "My people call me Velfara 1, who walks between worlds. Before the cleansing of Veltar Prime, I served with the 7th Reconnaissance. Strike Force. We were specialists in asymmetric warfare." The pieces clicked into place in Ryan's mind. He'd read classified briefings about the Veltar military units that had fought alongside human forces during the early colonial conflicts. Elite soldiers with natural stealth abilities and an almost supernatural awareness of battlefield dynamics. The 7th RSF was wiped out 3 years ago, Dr. Chun said. The official reports said there were no survivors. The official reports were wrong. Alara's voice was steady, but her skin patterns had darkened to deep purple. 17 of us survived the initial bombardment. We spent 6 months conducting guerrilla operations against the Kethara occupation forces. When human relief finally arrived, there were 4 of us left. She looked down at her hands that cleaned floors and maintained equipment, but had once held weapons in defense of her dying world. The colonial authority offered us refugee status and honest work. We were grateful. I chose sanitation because no one expects a janitor to be dangerous. I thought I could leave that life behind. The sound of pursuit was getting closer. Whatever else needed to be said would have to wait. The shaft, Ryan said. You said you're faster. Prove it. Alara nodded once, then seemed to fold in on herself, her body language shifting from careful civilian to predatory hunter. She moved forward through the tunnels, and Ryan found himself struggling to keep pace with her fluid, silent progress. The vertical shaft was exactly where she'd promised, a maintenance access that rose 20 meters. To the vehicle bay. She went up the ladder like a spider, her movements economical and sure. At the top, she paused, listening. Ben gave the all-clear signal dot. As Ryan helped Morrison up the shaft, he reflected on the strangeness of war. 3 hours ago, Alara had been invisible to him, just another maintenance worker keeping the base functional. Now she might be the key to their survival. When they reached the vehicle bay, she was already checking the remaining transports, her hands moving over control panels with professional competence. This one's functional, she called softly. Armored personnel carrier, full fuel cells, minimal damage. Can you drive it? Dr. Chun asked. Alara's smile was sharp and predatory. Doctor, I can do many things. But as she spoke, the bay's blast. Doors shuddered under heavy impact. The Kethara had found them. Time for running was over. Time for fighting had begun. Asterisk. The Kethara came through the blast doors like a living tide of chitin and fury. 6 warriors in full combat armor. There. Biorifles already spitting plasma death across the vehicle bay. They moved with the coordinated precision of a pack, covering angles and advancing by fire and movement. Ryan dove behind an overturned fuel cart, Morrison beside him, both men returning fire with professional accuracy. But their ammunition was running low, and the alien warriors seemed to shrug off hits that should have been fatal. Dr. Chon crouched behind the transport, trying to make herself invisible. Her medical training hadn't prepared her for this kind of warfare, but it was Alara who changed everything. She rose from behind a maintenance console with fluid grace, no longer bothering to hide what she was. Her gray overalls seemed like costume. Now, a disguise discarded in favor of deadly truth. The geometric patterns on her skin blazed with bioluminescent intensity, war paint that had been dormant for 3 years. She moved like her namesake, a ghost flowing between cover points. With inhuman speed, her hands found weapons, a plasma cutter from a maintenance kit, rewired in seconds to become a short-range energy weapon. A maintenance drone's gravitic repulsor turned into a kinetic projectile launcher the first Kethara warrior never saw. Her coming. One moment he was advancing on Ryan's position. The next, he was down with a plasma burn through his skull. But it was when she spoke that the universe truly shifted. She called out in the Kethara's own language, her voice carrying across the firefight with unmistakable authority. The alien. Words were guttural and harsh, but Ryan caught the tone a challenge, delivered with the confidence of someone who had earned the right to make it. The effect on the Kethara was immediate. Their coordinated advance faltered. Heads turned toward her position, bioluminescent war paint flickering with what looked almost like recognition. One of them, larger than the others, with more elaborate armor markings, chittered something. Back, Alara's response was swift and harsh, accompanied by a gesture that made the alien warriors step back. What did she say? Morrison whispered. I said, Alara replied without taking her eyes off the Kethara, that I am Velthara Ken's Civic Thee, ghost of Civic Ridge, and I told them that they should have stayed home. The lead warrior's mandibles clicked rapidly Kethara laughter, according to the xenobiology reports. He spoke again, longer this time, his tone carrying respect and something that might have been anticipation. He says, Alara translated, that. The stories said I was dead. What stories? Ryan asked. Her smile was sharp as a blade. The ones about Civic Ridge, where 93 Cathara warriors went to hunt 4 ghosts, and only 12 came home. The standoff stretched taut as a wire. 6 Cathara warriors facing 3 humans and 1 Veltar refugee with improvised weapons. The odds were impossible, but something had shifted in the dynamic. The aliens no longer moved with the confidence of hunters stalking prey. The lead warrior raised his bio-rifle, but his gesture was respectful, a salute between soldiers, rather than the casual brutality of an executioner. He spoke one more time, his words carrying the weight of ritual. He's offering single combat, Alara said, leader to leader. Winner claims the field and the survivors. That's insane, Dr. Chan whispered. You can't fight that thing alone. But Ryan was studying Alara's face, seeing the calculation behind. Her golden eyes. This wasn't bravado or desperation. This was tactics. You're not just any ghost, are you? He realized. You're their ghost. The one that got away. She nodded slowly. Commander Alara Felvin, 7th Reconnaissance Strike Force. And yes, I got away. But more importantly, I made them remember why they should fear the dark. She stepped forward, discarding her improvised weapons. From somewhere in her overalls, she produced a blade curved and gleaming, etched with symbols that seemed to shift in the light. Definitely not standard sanitation equipment. This is madness, Morrison said, but there was admiration in his voice. This is war, Alara corrected. The kind I was born for. The Cathara warrior stepped forward to meet her, his own ceremonial blade gleaming in the bay's harsh lighting. He was twice her size, armored and experienced, a veteran of 100 battles. But as they circled each other in the cleared space between the vehicles, Ryan saw something in the alien's posture, not just respect, but wariness. Fear, even. The ghost of Civic Ridge had come home to war, and the galaxy was about to remember why legends were born in blood. The duel began with the screech of metal on chitin, and the night exploded into violence. Asterisk. The blade dance between Alara and the Cathara war leader was poetry written in violence. They moved around each other with deadly grace. 2 apex predators who understood that this moment would define not just their individual fates, but the story that would be told across the galaxy. Ryan had seen knife fights before ugly, desperate affairs that ended quickly in blood and screaming. This was something else entirely. This was ritual warfare between species that had elevated combat to an art form. The Cathara, warrior easily 8 feet tall and armored in bioreactive. Chitin struck first with a sweeping blow that should have taken Alara's head from her shoulders. But she flowed beneath it like water, her counterstrike drawing a thin line of phosphorescent blood across his flank. She moved with inhuman fluidity, her body seeming to bend and twist in ways that defied anatomy. The geometric patterns on her skin blazed with increasing intensity, and Ryan realized they weren't just markings. They were a kind of biological HUD, tracking her opponent's movements and anticipating his attacks. The Cathara's blade whined. Through the air where she had been, always a heartbeat too slow. His chittering grew more frustrated with each missed strike, but there was something else in the sound, a growing excitement that spoke of a warrior, finally finding a worthy opponent. She's toying with him, Morrison whispered, his voice tight, with pain and awe, but Ryan could see the truth. Alara wasn't playing, she was learning. Each exchange of strikes mapped her opponent's capabilities, his preferences, his weaknesses. This wasn't a duel to her. It was reconnaissance. The dance continued for 3 minutes that felt like hours. The Cathara warrior was skilled and experienced, but he was fighting the last war. His techniques were designed for other Cathara, other patterns of movement and response. Alara was something new, something evolved, When she finally moved for the kill, it was with brutal efficiency that spoke of battles fought in the dark places, between stars. Her blade found the gap in his armor at the base of his skull, a precision strike that dropped him instantly. The remaining Cathara warriors stood frozen, their weapons lowered. Their leader's final words had been spoken in the formal cadence of their people's death, songs not a lament, but a celebration. He had found his death in honorable combat against a legend made flesh. Alara stood over the fallen warrior's body, her blade still gleaming with phosphorescent blood. When she spoke, her words carried across the bay with the authority of someone who had earned the right to command not through rank, but through victory. She spoke in Cathara. Again, her voice, formal and ritualistic. The surviving warriors listened in respectful silence. Then one by one, they began to withdraw, not fleeing, retreating with dignity, as soldiers who had witnessed something greater than themselves. "What did you tell them?" Dr. Chun asked as the last of the aliens disappeared into the maze of the base. "I told them the truth," Alara replied, wiping her blade clean before sliding it back into its hidden sheath. "That the ghosts remember every face, every name, every death, and that some legends are too dangerous to wake." She looked at Ryan with eyes that held the weight of years and worlds lost. "The stories will spread. By tomorrow, every Cathara ship in this sector will know that the ghost of Civic Ridge still walks. They'll withdraw from this system rather than risk another encounter." "Just like that?" Morrison asked. "Just like that." Her smile was tired but satisfied. "Sometimes the threat of war prevents more bloodshed than war itself." The base fell quiet around them, the sounds of battle fading into the distance. Through the bay's windows, they could see the running lights of Cathara ships lifting off from the colony's surface. A full withdrawal. Rian studied Alara's face, seeing both the legend she had been and the woman she had chosen to become. "So, what happens now? Do you go back to cleaning floors?" She considered the question seriously. Someone has to. The base will need to be rebuilt, and maintenance work is still honest work. But she looked at her hands, still steady despite what they had just done. Perhaps not just maintenance work. "The Colonial Defense Force could use someone with your skills," he offered. "As could the Navy SEALs," Morrison added with a grin that was more grimace. But Alara shook her head. "I've been a soldier. I've been a ghost. Now I think I'd like to try being a bridge between worlds, someone who can fight when necessary, but who chooses to build when possible." She helped Dr. Chun tend to Morrison's wounds while Ryan secured the bay and established communications with the incoming relief ships. But even as they worked, Ryan found himself watching her with new eyes. 3 hours ago, she had been invisible, just another refugee grateful for honest work. Now she was a legend reborn, a ghost who had chosen to walk in the light. The galaxy would indeed remember this day. They would tell stories of the Navy SEAL who had handed his rifle to a janitor, and of the janitor who had saved them all. But more than that, they would remember that courage came in many forms, and that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room was the one nobody bothered to notice. As the rescue ships descended through Kepler 442b's twilight sky, Alara returned to her quiet demeanor, helping coordinate the evacuation with the same careful efficiency she had once applied to cleaning duties. But Ryan noticed that the other survivors, military and civilian alike, now looked at her with respect that went beyond gratitude. The cleaner had saved the SEAL, just as the title promised. But the real story was bigger than that. It was about the moment when ordinary people revealed themselves to be extraordinary, when the invisible became legendary, and when the galaxy learned that heroism didn't require recognition, just the courage to act when action mattered most. The war was over. The legend had just begun. END*.